So here we are with Captain Kohli. It's a real privilege to be able to talk to him because, to be really honest, all these years with our father, neither Rupin nor I have had any conversation about Everest, and certainly not about the difficult and very painful episode he had there, which he's captured in an article which some of you may have read called Nights of Agony. It was very painful for him. It also, I think, there was a physical cost to it. I think he never felt so troubled and had never had such a difficult time, not only physically but also mentally. It was a great mental challenge to undergo that suffering. Maybe he made harder of it than the others, but it'd be interesting to hear Captain Kohli's perspective. Was it as hard for you, sir? The times you spent between 28th, 29th and 30th May, was that a very difficult moment for you as well? When you were in that camp at that very great height with just god-awful weather. The weather between the 25th and the 31st of May, I don't think any expedition had such bad weather, because he writes almost with envy that the Swiss walked up in shirt sleeves. The Americans are also in very light clothes. Yeah, but these guys really suffered. They were strong, they were fit, they were well equipped. Of course, the oxygen was short, which was...
Socks were short, the dry socks were short.
But if you had good weather, you wouldn't need to go to day 3 or day 4, right? So was it as hard for you as well? Was it a very difficult moment for you?
Well, my memory is not as strong as it used to be. But what I remember now is that 3 nights we spent at 28,000 together. I think this is perhaps the only time in the history of mountaineering that somebody has spent 3 nights at 28,000 feet. So those 3 nights were really memorable. And one night I remember our second night, oxygen was finished. And we had just 1 bottle of oxygen with 1/3 full, and the other had half full. So 1/3 we gave it to Sonam Gyatso, that you use this exclusively. And Hari and I decided that we will share it 15 minutes each. That was a very memorable scene, because Hari never used to give me back. I used to tell him that 15 minutes are over. He said, no, it's only 5 minutes. I said, no, 15 minutes. So I used to take it back. Then after 5 minutes, he repeats the same thing. He said, now my turn. Now. So whole night we were taking turns and sharing the same 1/2 oxygen bottle between 2 of us. I think that memory still is intact in my mind.
Thank you for mentioning that. It is described as such in the book as well. Apparently this 1/3 bottle of oxygen he considered his sole link to sanity, because at that point, with lack of oxygen and extremely cold weather, they were really having a mentally difficult time. And this competition with Captain Kohli, their interchange is described very in great and painful detail in the book. I think it's a worthy read. And obviously they got along and they met again, had a few drinks. It wasn't the end of the world. But did you feel cheated in a sense that the weather was so against you? Did you feel that in some sense the fates were against you? Or is that just the acceptable risk in mountains?
Well, we had a bad luck with the weather, because second night when we left, after second night for the summit, we were doing quite well. In fact, we were thumping each other, well done, we'll be soon on top of the world. And we were 100% confident that nothing will stop us. And suddenly when we were just below the south summit, the weather turned bad and it became difficult to move even a step further. I remember within half an hour we took only about 10-20 steps. So we felt that time has come, then we can't continue. So, but Hari was very confident to continue, and so was Sonam Gyatso. But my calculations showed that it was not possible. It was possible to reach the top, but coming back would have been impossible, and we would have died on return from the summit. So, but Sonam Gyatso and Hari were both very confident, they were keen to continue. So I remember I shouted, "Hari, Hari, stop!" He won't listen. There was a strong wind was this way. Then I had to shout at the pitch of my voice, "Hari, stop!" So finally they heard me, they stopped. I said, "Look at your watches, what time it is now?" They said 3:30 p.m. I said, "What time did we leave the last camp?" He said 7 o'clock. I said, "That means 8.5 hours are over, and we have not even gone half the way. What time will you get to the top?" They said, "After 6 p.m. Then I said, "How about coming back? Don't you want to come back?" Well, they both thought. They said, "Coming back, we may not come back." So I said, "Then why continue?" So they both agreed, and we moved back. At 8 p.m., it became pitch dark. And at 8 p.m. that day, I remember we couldn't see a thing. So Hari and I had a quick discussion. I said, if we stand, we'll fall 10,000 feet, we'll go straight to the advanced base camp of Everest. So he said, "Best thing is let us sit down." So we sat down, and we took one step each, sitting down. And then Sonam Gyatso came. He said, "This is the best thing we can do. Even sitting is dangerous, because if we slip, because in between, Hari slipped for a minute, and he was going down to advanced base camp. So fortunately, my ice axe went into the hard ice and stopped it. Anyway, after that, all three of us realized that standing is not possible. We sit down, not only sit down, but crawl. So we started crawling. And I think from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. we were crawling. At 10 p.m. suddenly I saw a shade coming in front of me. I didn't sort of realize what it could be. And then I got up and I tried to touch it. It was our tent. So that is how we survived. We could only remove our crampons, all three of us, with boots on. We went into the sleeping bags, and we don't know what happened. We slept like logs, and next morning we walked down to South Call, where Gurdiyal Singh was waiting. I think Sumi you had just left the South Call. It was one of those moments when there's no very little chance of survival, but we survived.
So had you not found the tent and had you carried on to the South Call, the chances would have been pretty slim as well, right?
Right.
Because finding that tent was critical. I think he writes that one of you wanted to curse the tent and say, "Let's move 10 feet away. I think it's the tent. It has to be the tent. If it's not the tent, I'll curse it and come back." Actually, it turned out, as you say, to be the tent. And you took a shortcut down on the way down. That didn't delay you, right? Because on the way up you had taken a different approach. On the way down you had taken the shortcut. That was not an obstacle. It was really the time and the hour. And I think Rupin and I are grateful that you turned them back. I think Maninder and Ravinder would also be grateful that you turned them back. That is why you came back, and that's a great decision you took. I think you have brought for us a very painful episode alive, and I think he writes in the book, which I think is very interesting for us to discuss. He says it would have been great to be successful, to have succeeded, but it was almost as good to have deserved to have succeeded. And they learned a lot, and then obviously history changed in '65. Obviously Himraj Dang was not there, but that moment in '62 is captured in the book and has been wonderfully presented by Captain Kohli. Any questions for Captain Kohli on that? I think we're very grateful that you could describe this to us. We'd never discussed this with our father because it was so painful for him.
You know, there is something which I just want to add on. Good evening, everybody. You know, this episode, firstly, I must share with you that to see Captain Kohli here and Suman Dubey, you know, they are the pioneers. And whatever today Indian mountaineering is, a lot of it is courtesy. Our ancestors in climbing, and two of them are sitting right here, Captain Kohli and Suman Dubey. You know, this attempt on Everest in 1962 is perhaps unmatched in the annals of Indian mountaineering. Because Mr. Himraj Dang was actually not supposed to be part of this attempt. He replaced Mr. Gurdial Singh, and he was actually to get back to Camp 5 that day. And suddenly he was told that he had to actually go up. All three of them were in this, in those days they had these small British meat tents where they were. And they were precariously anchored onto that slope. Today, when you climb Everest from that route, ropes are fixed. There's a proper, fixing of the route, so even a non-climber can actually go up. But these three gentlemen, Sonam Gyatso, Captain Kohli right here, and Mr. Himraj Dang, were actually climbing roped up. I repeat, they were climbing roped up, which implies that there was actually no safety line for them. Three of them purely relying on their technique, their ability to climb, their ability to see in that weather. The visibility was bad. They were removing, their glasses and cleaning it to see what was ahead, and they moved on. I think it is a tremendous effort, and it is just unfortunate that they were just short of the south summit. And as Captain Kohli brought out, it was a very good mountaineering decision to actually turn back because you always live to climb another day. But this attempt, to my mind, is unmatched. And excepting, I think, one odd time where someone has bivouacked for one night by a British team in 1975 between the south summit and the main summit, this kind of stay at 27,650 feet, what is actually given in the book, is a record. Is a record by itself. In the limited oxygen, they had 2 butane canisters. They had one, bag of plastic in which they actually put in ice, and they survived. It just shows that how strong they were, how compatible they were. And Mr. Dang has written in this book that had they turned back, it would have actually amount to letting the team down. They said, for the sake of the team, we must give it a shot. So that was their camaraderie, that was their teamwork, that was their commitment to each other. And I think, sir, it's a great honor to see Captain Kohli, who was there, as part of this trio, and of course, Suman Dubey.
Thank you, Ashok. You've been on the mountain.
I am reminded of one incident which I think will be worth mentioning. When we were coming, before we found the tent, we were on the south summit coming down on the ridge. And the ridge was very thin. Any fall would have taken us down to advanced base camp at 21,000 feet. And there I remember at least 3 occasions when Sonam, Hari and I decided that no use trying. We cannot survive. We have to be give our lives here. So we were 3 times we were choosing our place. that this will be my last place of burial. I will give up my life here. And I was trying to scratch to make a little pit there. All three of us had reached that stage on that particular evening.
Very hard to say anything after that. But to continue, Mr. Dubey mentioned something about John Dias. Could you bring to life anecdotally the greatness of Sonam Gyatso, whom you knew so well? Sonam Gyatso. Anything you can tell us about Sonam Gyatso?
Sonam Gyatso was he was undoubtedly the greatest mountaineer we had. And to describe him in 3 words, I can say, he can eat, he can sleep at any altitude.
And snore, I'm told.
And snoring, of course, was. He had no difficulty in sleeping, whether it was 28,000. Whenever I was with him on the Annapurna, also, he would be snoring and sleeping and eating at any altitude. He had no problem. He felt like as he is walking in Darjeeling or in Sikkim.
Any anecdotal memories? You were actually deputy leader in '62. How was your working relationship with Mr. John Dias? Anything you remember of John Dias that you can share? You knew him subsequently as well.
Well, John was a very lovable man. I think Mulki also knows him well. John was very lovable, and he and I had become almost like brothers, and we had no problem at any stage. And John was very affectionate, and he, of course, I had a good experience of Everest. In 1960 also I went there, and John had come for the first time. So he had a great faith in me, and he trusted me in whatever I proposed. He said, continue. And so we had that sort of relationship.
That's a lovely set of recollections, Captain Kohli. We truly are privileged to hear this from you directly. Obviously, some of this is in the book, but it doesn't come out with as much color as when you describe it.